This is the story of a changed security code, a mandatory request form, and the exact moment Queen Camilla realized the historic diamonds around her neck do not actually belong to her. In less than 24 hours, the carefully constructed illusion of her absolute ownership over the royal family's most sacred artifacts was quietly and ruthlessly dismantled behind the impenetrable steel doors of the palace. What Queen Camilla just realized behind closed doors is that a title might grant you access to the royal vault. But true institutional power determines who actually holds the keys. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack the secret legal maneuver she recently attempted to permanently secure the late Queen Elizabeth's most iconic jewels. How Princess Anne uncovered the paper trail during the recent June wedding preparations. The freezing institutional retaliation known internally as the Sovereign Vault Audit. And Camilla's devastating realization that she has been administratively downgraded from a monarch to a temporary borrower. To understand the sheer magnitude of this institutional collapse, you have to look at the staggering confidence Camilla operated with right up until the moment the trap snapped shut. For 3 decades, she played the longest, most disciplined game of psychological chess in modern British history. She absorbed intense public hatred, systematically eroded the towering legacy of Princess Diana, and patiently integrated herself into the absolute center of the sovereign establishment. For Camilla, jewelry has never been merely decorative. It is the ultimate undeniable forensic evidence of victory. When she was officially crowned, dropping the consort caveat, she believed she had finally inherited the complete unquestioned authority of the late Queen Elizabeth II. This intoxicating illusion of absolute power was on full display just days ago at the Founders' Day parade at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea. Camilla stepped out wearing the legendary Jardine Star brooch, a magnificent diamond piece intrinsically tied to the aura of the late Queen. It was a massive visual flex, a silent proclamation to the global public that she was the supreme matriarch, entirely in control of the dynasty's glittering legacy. But the fatal flaw in Camilla's architecture of power is a fundamental misunderstanding of royal asset law. She operates under the belief that because she is married to King Charles, she is entitled to the permanent spoils of the crown. However, the true commercial and historical wealth of the British monarchy, specifically the priceless collection of historic tiaras, necklaces, and brooches, does not belong to the monarch's spouse. It belongs to the Sovereign Vault, an entity held in trust for the nation and the direct bloodline. Driven by a profound commercial desperation and a terrifying awareness of her husband's fragile reign, Camilla attempted a staggering secret legal maneuver. Behind the scenes, amidst the chaotic scheduling of the early June royal events and Peter Phillips's wedding, Camilla's private office submitted a series of complex estate planning documents. According to internal palace leaks, she was attempting to discreetly transfer the permanent guardianship and legacy rights of specific, highly valuable pieces of jewelry from the sovereign collection into a private ring-fenced trust. It was a calculated attempt to ensure that if Charles were to pass away, she would retain legal control over these historic assets, effectively removing them from the future jurisdiction of Prince William and Catherine. You do not attempt to siphon off the historic treasures of Queen Elizabeth II without triggering alarms, especially when the ultimate guardian of that specific legacy is Princess Anne. The Princess Royal possesses the fierce, unyielding institutional memory of the crown, and she watches over her late mother's artifacts with forensic vigilance. The anomaly in the estate paperwork was flagged during a routine inventory check coordinated for the recent family wedding. When Anne reviewed the documents attempting to reclassify the guardianship of the jewels, she recognized it instantly as a parasitic encroachment upon the sovereign rights of the next generation. Anne did not confront Camilla in a chaotic, undignified drawing room argument. Instead, she took the paper trail directly to the one man who wields the absolute administrative authority to stop it, Prince William. When William and Anne compared notes, the realization was immediate and chilling. Camilla was attempting to steal the visual history of the crown to fund her own future legacy. The retaliation from the future king was a masterclass in weaponized protocol and silent administrative execution. Prince William did not leak the attempted theft to the tabloids or issue a public condemnation. He used the cold, unyielding machinery of the state to execute a flawless counterstrike. Overnight, William and Anne initiated what is now quietly referred to as the Sovereign Vault Audit. Under the guise of a routine security modernization program, William leveraged his authority to completely overhaul the physical and administrative access to the Crown's private jewel collection. The execution was devastatingly subtle. The digital access codes to the vault were instantly changed. The long-standing practice of allowing Camilla's senior dresses to freely enter, the archives and select pieces for upcoming state events was permanently revoked. What looked like a routine security update was actually a total dismantling of Camilla's glittering empire. The new protocol dictated a freezing, humiliating reality. If the Queen wishes to wear any historic piece from the Sovereign Vault, including the very items she had just attempted to place in a trust, her office must now submit a formal itemized request form. This document must state the specific event, the historical justification for wearing the piece, and the exact time of return. Most devastatingly, this request must be reviewed and officially co-signed by the administrative officers of the Prince and Princess of Wales. William successfully utilised the massive, quiet weight of the institution to strip Camilla of her assumed ownership, legally categorising her access as strictly conditional. She was no longer the undisputed master of the vault. She had been administratively downgraded to a temporary borrower, entirely dependent on the goodwill of her stepson and the woman she had spent years trying to overshadow. When the reality of the Sovereign Vault Audit set in the polished aristocratic facade of the Queen shattered, for the first time since her coronation, the visual humiliation was absolute. When her styling team attempted to retrieve a specific diamond parure for an upcoming diplomatic reception, they hit an invisible, impenetrable wall of royal protocol. The vault guards operating under direct orders from William's estate politely refused entry, handing the Queen's staff a blank request form. In a wave of cold, suffocating panic, Camilla realised that her secret administrative trick had permanently backfired. Stripped of her illusion of absolute control and financially walled off from the dynasty's greatest treasures, she knew the trap had snapped shut. Terrified by the sudden freezing reality that she actually owns nothing, Camilla retreated to the one remaining card she had left to play. She went directly to King Charles, presenting the blank request form and demanding that he use his supreme sovereign power to crush William's administrative blockade. The entire balance of the modern monarchy hung in the heavy, suffocating silence of the king's study, waiting for him to speak. When Queen Camilla stood in the quiet sanctuary of the king's study, demanding that Charles use the absolute power of the sovereign to crush William's administrative blockade and tear up the blank request form, she expected immediate compliance. For 30 years, Charles had been her ultimate shield. He had fought his mother, his advisors, the British press, and his own children to force Camilla's acceptance into the royal fold. He had spent decades burning through his own political capital to protect her from the consequences of their shared history. Camilla fully expected that in this moment of acute administrative humiliation, Charles would summon Prince William and deliver a crushing reprimand. She expected the king to remind his heir that Camilla was the queen and that the royal vault was hers to command. But she encountered something far more terrifying than anger. She encountered a devastating silence. What appears to be true, according to those familiar with the internal dynamics of the king's household, is that Charles simply refused to intervene. He did not yell. He did not defend his wife's attempt to transfer the royal jewels. He looked at the blank request form sat in the suffocating quiet of his office and did absolutely nothing. This was the psychological climax of Camilla's decades-long campaign for power, and it ended with a freezing realization. Charles is no longer the rebel Prince of Wales fighting for his mistreated lover. He is the king. And as the monarch facing his own profound vulnerabilities and the fragile state of his reign, his primary overriding duty is the survival of the crown. Charles knows with forensic clarity that the historic wealth and prestige of the institution are its only true anchors. To override the Prince of Wales in order to secure a private diamond trust for his wife would be an act of institutional suicide. To publicly or privately dismantle William's invocation of sovereign financial protection would signal a divided, chaotic monarchy that allows its heritage to be pillaged for personal gain. In that singular moment of silence, Charles chose the integrity of the institution over the vanity of his wife. Camilla learned the hardest lesson of her royal life. The king will no longer save her from the Prince of Wales. To understand why this administrative lockout is so permanently catastrophic for Camilla, we must examine the staggering commercial desperation hiding behind her royal title. The public sees a queen consort riding in gilded carriages and waving from the balcony of Buckingham Palace, dripping in the world's most famous diamonds, but behind closed doors, the forensic financial architecture of the firm tells a remarkably different story. Camilla owns virtually nothing of the royal estate. Her secret maneuvering With the trust fund was never just about wanting pretty jewelry. It was a frantic, calculated attempt to secure a permanent financial and structural foothold before her ultimate protector is gone. She knew that without King Charles, she would instantly become a guest in a house owned by a man who holds all the actual capital. Prince William is not just the heir to the throne, he is the landlord. He owns the Duchy of Cornwall, the billion-dollar real estate empire that funds the monarchy's private endeavours. Camilla possesses no independent constitutional funding and no vast ancestral properties of her own to fall back on. By auditing the Sovereign Vault, William legally, quietly and permanently locked her out of the ultimate royal treasury. The realization that she is now entirely at the mercy of her stepson's administrative goodwill is a psychological prison of her own making. The illusion of absolute power was instantly replaced by the stark, terrifying reality of financial dependency. As Camilla's shadow empire was quietly dismantled behind the steel doors of the vault, the visual landscape of the monarchy began to immediately reflect the new order. This is where the silent execution of revenge translates into undeniable public reality. In the days following this internal crisis, viewers and royal analysts noticed a profound, subtle shift in how protocol is being weaponized. At a high-profile diplomatic reception shortly after the audit, the Princess of Wales emerged as a portrait of freezing aristocratic restraint. Catherine did not need to issue a statement condemning Camilla's attempted power grab. She simply allowed the massive, quiet weight of the institution to protect her rightful place. At this reception, Catherine stepped out wearing a specific breathtaking diamond and pearl choker, an iconic piece from the deepest archives of the Sovereign Vault, historically associated with the late Queen Elizabeth and kept strictly out of sight during the early days of Charles's reign. Its sudden reappearance was not a petty aesthetic choice. In the highest echelons of the British royal family, jewellery is the forensic evidence of shifting power. By wearing that specific heirloom, authorised seamlessly through her own husband's administrative channels, Catherine was actively executing the institutional restoration of the true bloodline while signalling the permanent boundary placed upon Camilla. Catherine demonstrated that uncomplaining sacrifice, fierce protection of the heritage, and steadfast loyalty to the crown will always outmaneuver unchecked ambition. She does not need to fight Camilla for dominance because her husband has already engineered the ultimate checkmate. The true royals remain on the inside, holding the keys to the vault, and the outsiders are managed with blank request forms. This brings us to the deeper, tragic meaning of this entire crisis. Camilla spent 30 years carefully clawing her way to the very top of the British social hierarchy. She endured intense public hatred. She orchestrated a masterful public relations rehabilitation, and she successfully convinced Charles to place the highest crown in the land upon her head. She believed that reaching the summit meant she would finally be safe, that she could secure her future and rewrite the history of the dynasty in her own image. But what this story undeniably proves is that the crown on Camilla's head is entirely hollow. She is surrounded by the trappings of unimaginable power, yet she is paralyzed by the reality that she is merely a temporary borrower in William's empire. She played a 30-year game of chess, sacrificing everything for the ultimate title, only to realize too late that she cannot take the board with her. Camilla is now trapped in a gilded cage of her own making, sitting next to a king who will no longer defend her. Walled off from the royal billions and forced to live under the absolute unyielding authority of the next generation. The era of the Shadow Queen is effectively over. If you want to continue unpacking the silent warfare, the hidden administrative maneuvers, and the psychological power dynamics of the modern British monarchy, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We will continue to pull back the curtain on the illusions of power, one subtle detail at a time. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next analysis.